intend to recount to you, since so the poets are treated. These broken walls generate lice so swollen that they look like flies. Never was there such a stench as in my so dainty hospice. Rather than wallowing in self-pity, Machiavelli was inclined to meet his reversal with a wisecrack and a shrug. The image of his dainty hospice, crawling with lice who fatten themselves on the wasting flesh of prisoners, is half farce, half tragedy, a play of light and shadow that runs through both his political and literary works. So the poets are treated, he snorts, making light of his predicament, and, with more than a hint of self-mockery, placing himself among the long line of artists who have suffered for their craft. One of the clearest signs that his spirit remained strong was that he found the time to take a swipe at one of his favorite targets, the pious fools whose answer to life's every problem was prayer. What gave me most torment was that, sleeping near dawn, I heard them chanting the words, "We are praying for you." Now let them go away, I beg, if only your pity may turn itself toward me, good Father, and loosen these cruel bonds. Who but Machiavelli would insist that having to listen to prayers all night was more painful than a session with the state torturer? He would have been mortified if, in a moment of weakness, he suddenly embraced religious beliefs he had scoffed at most of his adult life. He was not one of those fair-weather skeptics who deny God in the good times only to rediscover him in their hour of need. He refused to accept the easy comfort of religious pabulum, preferring to take his chances with fickle Fortuna rather than place an existential bet with the priests he regarded as little more than charlatans and swindlers. In any case, it was not the power of prayer that freed him after a 3-week sojourn in his dainty hospice, or even the charm of his jocular little poem, but his captors' grudging admission that they lacked any real evidence he was involved in the plot. But his release was not the end of his difficulties. Even after he was freed, Machiavelli remained under a cloud of suspicion. He was barred from government service, the only career he had ever known, and the only one in which he could employ his distinctive talents. Short of losing his life, something that seemed more than likely at one point, it is hard to see how the past 12 months could have brought more disappointment and sorrow. These days he rarely made the journey to Florence, a few hours' ride by mule or on foot, along the winding road that led through the olive groves and vineyards of the Tuscan countryside. The handful of friends who had remained loyal to him during his recent troubles could now find him living in obscurity at his farm in the village of Sant'Andrea in Percosina, trying, without much success and even less enthusiasm, to eke out a meager living from his modest patrimony. From his fields he could see the red-tiled rooftops of his beloved Florence, crowned by the soaring arc of Brunelleschi's dome and the angular tower of the Palazzo della Signoria, the government building that had been his place of work in recent years. But far from providing solace, the view was a constant reminder of a life in shambles. The depth of his anguish can be felt in a note he scribbled in the margins of a document he was working on. Post res perditas, it read. After everything was lost. One consolation was that without a real job he had plenty of time on his hands to philosophize, to put his troubles behind him, and to try to draw larger lessons from his own experience. As he wandered beneath the bright Tuscan sky and gazed at the city shimmering in the distance, he gained new perspective on the human condition. On occasion he gave vent to his bitterness, but even when his mood darkened, he tried to see the bigger picture. In a poem titled On Ingratitude or Envy, he contemplated the dismal fate of those who served their country well, only to find themselves repaid with slander. Hence, often you labor in serving, and then for your good service receive in return a wretched life and a violent death. So then, ingratitude not being dead, let everyone flee from courts and governments, for there is no road that takes them.